Green Mars by Stanley Robinson. This is episode 7 in a series I'm doing called The Masterpieces of Science Fiction. This is a list of 140 books that Easton Press put together, and if you want some more information on the series, I'll put a link to the announcement video that I did down in the description. So this is book 2 of the Mars Trilogy, and this book won the Hugo Award for Best Novel. A couple weeks ago, I did a spoiler-free review for Red Mars, and you can go back and look at that, but I'll probably cover everything in this video, so there's probably not a need to watch that video unless you just want to help out the channel. So with it being book 2 in a trilogy, I was kind of struggling on how I could do a spoiler-free review for this book, because all these books that are in the Masterpieces of Science Fiction series that I'm doing, I want them to be spoiler-free because I'm really trying to pique people's interest and try to get some people to read more science fiction. So I think I came up with a way. I'm going to kind of review the first 2 books all as one, but I won't really talk about events that happen in one book or the other. I'm not really going to talk too much about the events. I'm going to make it really broad. So if you watch this video and you were going to start off with book 1 and start in, you won't know where that book ends, where Green Mars picks up. It'll hopefully stay nice and fresh for you. That's the plan anyways. So this series so far it revolves around 100 colonists who were sent from Earth to initially go there and set up a permanent settlement. Now these first 100, which they're called, were mostly scientists and scientific background type people, and they were sent there to kind of get everything up and running and to make some habitable spaces, and then eventually more people were going to end up coming from Earth. But this was kind of their main goal. Now, the whole story is really about the different people who show up to the planet and have different ideas. And there's a group of main characters, and they'll all end up kind of getting these followers or forming these factions based on their ideas. So some people landed on Mars and saw the beauty of it and didn't want to change anything. So that's what they're going for. You have people that see the potential of Mars to terraform it and make it inhabitable so more people from Earth can come there. So you have a faction that builds up around that. You have people that look at Mars as a fresh start for humanity, where we can throw away all the old political and sociological ideals that maybe didn't work so good, and you can start over from scratch and create a new civilization. So there's that. And then you have people who look at it as a resource or money, and how they could maybe get rich or send resources back to Earth, because in this timeline, Earth has kind of been going through some struggles. They've got some resource issues, overpopulation issues. Earth is kind of in a bad state. So there is a lot of interest in Mars being an aid to Earth. So far in the series, in the first 2 books, it's mostly been about that. And the differences between all these people, sometimes it's peaceful, sometimes it may not be peaceful differences, but how that works out in the end, and how everyone may have to give up something to make everyone happy in the end. I haven't gotten to the end, so I'm hoping this ends up being a happy ending. So there's some really big events that happen through the series, and those events will definitely keep you engaged in the story, and the characters are really good. But besides that, I don't really want to say anything else about the plot of the book. The pros and cons for this: the pros, the amount of research that Stanley Robinson put into this book has got to be an immense amount of research. It's just amazing. It seems like he thought of every single detail, every option, from every level of every science down to what do you use for currency, what should the tires be made of for a Mars rover, to the psychology of individuals and how they interact with each other. Every aspect is covered in this book. The characters, I mentioned, if you watched the first video, I mentioned the characters were really good, really realistic, but I didn't really have too much of an emotional attachment to most of them. But in this second book, that has changed a little bit for me. And even now that I look back, it could have started earlier. There's just some things that have happened that have changed my mind a little bit on that. The cons, there's so far in like 1,400 pages, there hasn't been a ton of plot development and progression. I could probably describe the plot to someone in a relatively short time. So while this story is amazing, I think it's a masterpiece, you have to work for this story. It is not going to be easy, and most of the criticism I've heard is it's boring and there can be some sections where you slog through. I agree to a point, but I do feel like if you take your time and don't think of it that way, all the science and all those long sloggy parts are really there for a reason, and if you stick with it, it will provide more depth and clarity to the story. I want to say one other con is there's some pacing issues where a lot of really interesting parts are a little crammed together, and then there are some longer, less interesting parts. And so getting through some of those longer parts can be a struggle sometimes, but I've never thought about putting this series down or DNFing it or anything like that. So I'll leave it at that. So that's about it. I'm not going to do a rating yet or anything. I think I'm probably going to read a couple books, at least one book, maybe two books in between picking up the third book. And when I finish this book, I will do a review for the whole series that's all spoiler. So I'll put big warnings in the video title, and I'll warn everybody in the beginning of the video. And then maybe later I'll read the short story collection called The Martians and do a spoiler-free series overview as well. So that's about all I've got for this video. I think the next book I'm going to read, though, is Invasion of the Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. This is another book in the Masterpieces of Science Fiction list, and it's a 200-page book. It looks like it's completely different from what I've been reading, and these books are pretty dense and they take a lot of concentration, and I think I need a little break from that right now. So I'm going to read this, and then we'll see if I might jump right into Blue Mars after that, or I might do another one. We'll see how I feel. So thanks again for watching the video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.